Good afternoon, my friend.
What's going on, man, on this hot Sunday?
Yeah, good to see you again. I know. It's been a little too cool lately, hasn't it?
Man, it is. Well, we got about 2 months or something like that until we got fall.
Exactly. Yeah, climatologically, it's a month away, but in real talk, it's about 2 months.
I can't wait. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for this Oklahoma heat to pass.
Me too. So speaking of which, how have things been with you? I know it's been a hot summer for you personally and professionally. I've seen a few videos of you out in weather that's a little too warm, wearing looks like wool and hoodies. Are you trying to give yourself a little bit of a sweat off there each morning?
Look, man, when I even when I work out, like I'm the guy that wears like sweatpants and long shirts. Like the heat does not bother me. I'm just a hot natured person, but you know, that's really been more on the personal health journey, man. I had to really focus on prioritizing myself and my health. You know, when you lead and you're active in different things, and most of my life I've been like the leader person, prioritize everybody else. And if I really wanted to see all these goals through, I had to make sure that my health was important. So videos I post are me in my hoodie walking in my neighborhood at like 6:30 in the morning. So it's an early morning walk and getting a good sweat in, man. So it's been very therapeutic in the morning and giving a lot of clarity on things that I got to get done.
Yeah, you know, I'm with you. I'm in the exact same boat, especially seeing myself after some of these screen tests we've done. I'm like, buddy, you need to get out there and start getting back in shape. This is getting a little out of hand. I've run an Oklahoma Gazette. I always say, I'm like, it's kind of the party paper. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's food, it's music, it's arts and culture. Yeah. So I'm always out there, you know, doing too much.
Yeah. It's the same thing with me, man. People always offering you food or come drink this or eat that. Then you got to work and you're like, where did I put in any other thing that was going to contribute to my health in that? And I look back as well, because Google does a great job of reminding you of what you did last year and 9 years ago. Yeah. And those 8-9 years ago photos and videos, you're like, man, I looked good back then. Like I look like a slob now.
I know. That's it. You know? And that's it. You know, I know for you, you've always been kind of the business back end side as well. You've been in sales, but you know, this, that, and the other. And now you and I both, we had this conversation. I let you know that Oklahoma Gazette was going to get rid of the paper and we're going to come at things differently. So you and I have both been on this digital journey together of coming out the other side. So what have you learned in the few months since you've started?
You know, what I really learned when we took a vacation trip to Montego Bay. And I knew, because that's just a habit. Like you're in this creative space and you have something to report or post or share. You always have your phone out and your brain is always thinking about what to creatively post. And while I was there, I didn't post much at all, which was different. But I also wanted to enjoy my time. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to post much. And then when I got back and the few times I did post, I got more engagement on those posts from being away and not posting as much than I did when I was thinking about post 3 to 4 or 5 times a day and make content. So I realized from that trip that there just were some unproductive I was busy, but it wasn't as productive as I thought. So on the other side of that, I've cut out a lot of things. I just determined that's something I just wanted to do, or does it truly match what I'm doing? One, for my personal goals and family and my health, and then does it match in business? And I came back and I was cutting it. Like I was cutting the fat. I was emailing people like I'm not doing this anymore with really no explanation. And so on the other side of this new phase that we're in, I've just really enjoyed it. Yeah. I've really enjoyed it because I'm starting to do things that really are in more alignment personally and professionally. I'm just enjoying the process. I'm enjoying the journey.
Absolutely. Well, one of the big things that you've done is like you didn't have enough on your plate was start this nonprofit.
Yeah.
Like I know you're still in the development phase of that. And the I guess the full-on launch, if you will, is still a few months out. But can you tell me a little bit about why you decided to do it and what the mission of it is?
What's crazy is in 2018, before that, before the official launch of the business OKC Black Eats, I was like, all right, I need to start a business. And I had this great name at that time. At that time, it was Bigger Than Food. And so I saw how much it cost to start a nonprofit or a business. And I was like, I don't have that much money. And so then what's funny is the name Bigger Than Food was registered as a not-for-profit in 2018. I forgot about it. And so I was like, all right. And I ended up getting some more money, going into entrepreneurship and registered OKC Black Eats as an LLC. And I totally forgot about Bigger Than Food Foundation as a not-for-profit. So, I'm serving on these boards and these commissions in the city, and I learned what it takes. I was like, wait a minute, let me go look it up again. And I found out, I was like, what? I've had this charitable organization all this time. And so we applied for our 501c3, got it this year. But our 501c3 it's also still based on our mission and objectives, is creating an awareness for Black-owned businesses, prioritizing growth in Black communities, no matter where they are, and cultural enterprise. So you can look at the Bigger Than Food Foundation as a non-for-profit organization that's focusing on how to grow communities through economic development activities and maintaining the culture of those communities for Black people, no matter where they are. And I say that intentionally about no matter where we are, because often the thought is there's this effort to only focus on areas of cities and towns where there's the highest population of Black people. But it also means that you are forgetting about Black people who don't live in those highly populated Black parts of town. And so when I would talk to people in business, and they would say, man, we're not a part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. Like when there's the state of Black-owned business, or there's a study that comes out, the perspective of those business owners and families that live in other areas of our city and our state are not included. And one quick example would be, I know a physician who built a house in Northwest Oklahoma City in an affluent area, but she was one of the first homes built. Well, a few years ago, she was actually followed home because the HOA person didn't believe she actually lived there. Oh, God. So that led to, a bunch of different conversations, her being harassed, no apology after they realized that she's been living there longer than the person was harassing them. But that conversation never made it to media. It never received an article. But the conversations surrounding those similar issues in, let's say, the Northeast quadrant were always getting covered. I was like, wait a minute, there has to be some balance in experiences. And so through the foundation, whether it's OKC Black Eats or any other business we have, it's driving attention to the complete story and the complete spectrum of the Black experience, no matter where Black folks live. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of ties in the one story that we managed to get through. And I don't say that like it fell apart or anything, but you had so much on your plate and just trying to negotiate.
Are you talking about Bobo's?
Yeah.
Dude, you always give this like extra like apologizing, long-winded thing about Bobo's. It's cool. Like, cause it was, it was a crazy time in business and the paper. I truly understand that. So let me release you from that. The story came out and it was an amazing story and people are still talking about it.
And that's what I was about to say. By the time we got this thing out, like everyone absolutely loved it.
It ended up being perfect timing.
And to be fair, we held it for a certain editorial consideration that didn't come true.
It had no fault of mine or yours. Exactly. There were other factors involved, but when it came out, it was a beautiful story.
Well, I feel like, there we go. We can now clear the air. I've said this to you, but if Bobo's family is watching, my apologies.
No, they're fine.
There was a real reason for it. And so, after we got it out and it did really well, people really enjoyed it. And you said the family liked it. And honestly, for me, end of day, that's really with a profile like that, all I care about is did the people who it's about enjoy it and think it accurately represented them.
Because here's what I love about even that story is even for us when we creating content and stories, it's the story behind the food. Many people didn't know the origins of Bobo. They didn't know that he was an actor. They didn't know he was an advocate. They didn't know his relationship with the police. They were like, why is it? So there's this weird like idea of, well, Bobo's has this long line of people and white people go to the east side to see Bobo's. Mm-hmm. But never understanding that Bobo had a great relationship with police. Mm-hmm. Bobo was very intentional that everybody wanted to feel safe. The article helped people put more context on that wasn't by an accident. That was very intentional. So I get a lot of feedback, especially after it was up, like that. I didn't know that part of who he was. And there's so many stories like that, whether they're about a Black-owned business or in the Black community or in the Asian community or the Native or other community groups that people just need to hear. And what I love about what you do at the Gazette is that you're trying to find that story that no one's talking about.
Absolutely. Because
there's just more, there's more complexity and beauty and innovation and passion and purpose at all levels that more people need to talk about. And y'all do a great job, and that's what we try to do as well.
Well, thanks. Hopefully we'll circle back. I know we talked a long while back about doing a story about the slaughter residents.
Yeah. Well,
you called me about that, and you were like, dude, do you know about this? I'm like, I sure didn't. Yeah. And then it showed up in my feed not too long ago. There was an event being held there.
Yep.
And it started me, the gears grinding again, because that whole history, there's so much hidden history in Oklahoma City that I don't think most people, I don't know that they're unaware. It's that I don't know if there's a real source anymore. And again, it's kind of the nature of the death of print that kind of drags back out some of these old stories.
I think it's just easy. I think what's easy in Oklahoma is to talk about the land run, our native roots, and white men.
Yeah.
That's the easy thing to talk about. But I think it's also when you get just a little below the surface, there's the truth that many people, I just feel like in media, don't want to cover.
Sure.
You can't talk about the land run without talking about how did the 5 tribes get here. You can't talk about the 5 tribes without talking about, well, they did have slaves. Mm-hmm. So what was a freedman? Was an enslaved African that was enslaved by the tribes, which is why they had to get 40 acres, which is why my family has the land allotment deed signed by the Choctaw and Chickasaw Nation governor. How did that happen? So you have to kind of talk about those deeper things. And it's nothing bad. It's just that that's just what it is. But that also is what makes Oklahoma unique. You know, and there's nothing wrong with talking about the full context of things without being political or polarized, because you truly get to understand. So if this person looks native, can they be Black and native? Like, absolutely, because I can show you pictures from my relatives who were full blood and they had big, beautiful hair.
Yeah.
And lived in Garvin County. So... you know, so the unfortunate part about media is, I think now where I'm seeing media really being forced to move to, because you have social media. Mm-hmm. So if you don't cover it, somebody's going to crack open their phone and they're going to post it on a social media platform. So either you cover it or somebody else is going to cover it. So why not cover it?
You're not wrong. And there is something about kind of that gatekeeper theory that's disappeared that I do really like and enjoy it. But at the same time, something about the craft of reporting and, you know, verifying things. And that's my fear is that we've kind of entered this, for lack of a better term, like post-truth world in a lot of ways, where it's like, you know, the term fake news is bandied about. But, you know, in a lot of cases, people aren't trying to actively deceive. Right. It's just there's no verification process to double up and confirm. But at the same time, you know, I wonder, growing up here, the unit on Oklahoma history or, you know, the class goes a certain way. And even the whole Greenwood thing, we got like, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds one day. And then it was like moving on. And now with the the anniversary.
But if you live south of Oklahoma, like I'm from Stevens County, there was no conversation about Tulsa and Greenwood.
Right.
The only reason I knew about it because my 11th grade teacher, who was Black, and she taught it outside of the curriculum. But you don't hear much about it as well. But then it's just deeper. Black cowboys. We look at Bass Reeves from Oklahoma. How the heck do you think we have U.S. Marshals?
Right.
That was a Black man.
Right.
The logo for the Cowboy Hall of Fame is not a native. That is a Black man because his picture is inside the museum, but no one wants to say that person's a Black man. They say he's native. So, it's weird. Do you think, this is a question for you. You thought you was going to just interview me. Do you think social media has made in the craft and the people who are really studying journalism made them feel pressure to get things out and fact check less?
Yes and no. Social media has had that pressure in one way, but I came from a hard news background. I wrote for the Oklahoman for 12 years. You were always trying to beat other people. Yeah. And that was one of always the fears, especially in the race to get things out, is you get things wrong. And so where's that balance, especially if it's like breaking news? Like, are you going to report this first and then go verify later and then go, oh, it was just the internet? We pull it down. A lot of people go off those initial reports. It's the same thing. And, a lot of conspiracy theories are born from those first 5 minutes, those first 15 minutes. Yep. It happens with 9/11, happened with the Oklahoma City bombing. They're like, well, what about this? They said this and it went away. And it was like, well, it turns out they misheard or, it was completely different. Yeah. So, I don't think by and large, at least from my experience doing this, that you have many people who are out there like actively trying to like force or foment a narrative. But we're very human. We try to make mistakes, or we do make mistakes. And in the course of doing it, there's not really a discussion about how the sausage is made. Right. Right. And now, it's doubled down and put more pressure on things. But again, it's also allowed a depth and breadth of conversation that I don't think that we would have on any topic, or not necessarily any topic, but certain topics. Yeah. Because they are no longer, if it's not in the newspaper or wasn't on TV, then who really knew? Right. And now, you can
get news anywhere.
Exactly. And, you have cultural moments that a newspaper or TV may not have mentioned or would have a 15-second thing. This whole boating incident, is that the way to talk about it, down in Alabama?
Alabama brawl.
Exactly.
Right.
For example, that's become such a cultural flashpoint. And then it's like memed. Like we've got these weird event of the moment.
We've had a lot of conversations with my friends about that. And when we look at social media, look at Clubhouse. A beta version. It was a beta version of an app that just blew up during COVID. And so when we start looking at the audiences and the groups that really push these trends, especially in social media, it's predominantly African American. So when the Alabama Brawl came out, the same day these memes come out that are created by then there's the discrepancy. Some of them are created by Black creatives, and some of them are created by conglomerate groups that have non-Black teams or predominantly white teams that use colloquialisms and slang as if it is but no, that team was actually not Black at all. So when you look at how these apps and trends move, especially if it's cultural, ethnic, when you dig a little bit deeper, you're like, okay, so they're doing a great job of getting a message out. It's a good and a bad thing. I think it's really good because it pushes awareness more. But when you look at the state of Oklahoma, there is no pushing of trends and culture and awareness in the state. So where do you get it from? And so when we first started, I can't tell you how much pushback I got just from saying Black owned. Yeah. This is 2017. And for where we are now, but in 2017, getting messages, oh, you're a racist and you're a separatist. And I'm like, so you got a problem with me saying Black owned, but you don't have a problem with saying something's native owned.
Right.
You don't have a problem if someone says it's Asian or Hispanic. You just have a problem with me saying Black. And I didn't get coverage. I wouldn't get media responses. It really didn't change until I started showing the economic value of what I do.
Okay, now that is certainly true.
That is when the conversation changed during COVID.
And I will say that of other social trends and movements is like, once you show there's value in it, there's a market for it.
Once you see the money.
Exactly.
Right, and start showing data. But people didn't understand I was doing that because I couldn't find a list of Black and minority-owned businesses in the state.
Yeah.
Well, why? That goes back to Senate Bill 1. That was a Jim Crow law. It goes back to being repealed. So there's these things that as a young state that actions were made 50, 60, 70 years ago that were still being impacted from because somebody's relative was still alive. Mm-hmm. But how do we take our influences in media and journalism to get people just to think? Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to strong arm anybody to do anything, but I want you to think, why am I not spending money with a Black-owned business? Mm-hmm. Why am I not picking up the Gazette versus something else? Mm-hmm. Did somebody influence you? Where did you get your idea of it? And then once people started thinking like, oh, I don't really have a reason, go try it out.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, what's worse that can happen? That's what I always try to explain to people. People who eat chicken tenders 5 meals a week. I'm like, have you ever thought about going across the street and eating there? No, that sounds weird. I'm like, does it? Well, How do you know? Like,
I have no idea.
It's going to be one of your favorite things. I mean, I was the same way when I was young, mm-hmm. but as a teenager, I experienced Thai food and Indian food. And I had no idea what the hell I'm doing. Yeah. And there's that whole thing where you walk in and, oh God, I'm going to embarrass myself. Mm-hmm. And as a teen, like that's the worst thing that you can do. Right. Is like accidentally, reveal that you don't know everything about the world. But that's what I've learned is one of my most valuable tools as a reporter is the phrase, I don't know. Yeah. Or, it's like, and you just, that's the name of the job. When I would try to explain to people, I'm like, I got this job because I'm curious. I was like, that really is all it came down to is I wanted to wander around and ask questions. I find something interesting. You mentioned Black Rodeo. Right. There's a huge history of that here. Something Absolutely. I've always wanted to do and take a deep dive in and haven't had a chance. No time like the present, right? Is like the history of the Black towns and settlements in Oklahoma and why they exist. Mm-hmm. There's a cultural reason, several of them, and why these things existed unique to Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And so, especially when it comes to Black culture, there's so much, and I wouldn't even say it's unpublished because I had a professor in college who wrote a book on the history of Black newspapers in Oklahoma. And so much of kind of the important, wouldn't say cornerstones, but just these paving stones of Black culture and history in America actually occur in Oklahoma. Yeah.
Well, it's even how we learned, there was storytelling. So we learned about our family history from being around elders and talking about our family history. So then you learn to pass stories down in terms of the newspapers. And Oklahoma City has 2 Black-owned newspapers. I think Tulsa has, I believe, a bit more than that. But I'm from Duncan, and the Stevens County Museum is in my hometown. My grandmother was a domestic worker who actually worked for Mr. Halliburton. And when you go into the museum, which I've rarely been into, but when I finally went a few years ago, I actually saw faces that I knew from my family and my relatives. The first Black woman that was the first African-American and African-American woman as a police officer in Duncan is a cousin. But it's not talked about in the paper, but she's in the museum. So then how do you get information out when the history of, the habits of whatever industry suppressed information? So one beautiful thing about what social media does, it gives us a chance to talk out loud about these things that people just didn't know. There was the Black Towns Conference was Saturday.
Really?
It was at the Oklahoma History Center, and the first Black mayor in the United States is right here in Oklahoma. And getting a chance to meet and talk to her and talk about the challenges that they have with getting their towns growing and going forward. And there's also a connection between the Black towns and that are predominantly in the tribal areas of our state. But how did that happen? You don't really want to talk about that, right? But if we don't talk about why the towns don't have support and how people got here, many people like that came from through the land run or whatever, Black folks came to Oklahoma just like people who were immigrants that came to Oklahoma because they wanted to get away from the South.
Right.
And then guess what happened? Oklahoma became just like the South, right? And so we go on from there. So I love how even in your curiosity to learn, like, but why? I think that's the great part of learning is why, and getting down to the why, because you'll learn a different perspective that might make sense. Yeah,
and it makes you look at things in a completely different perspective. Like, I mean, when you start talking about even the development of the city or Tulsa, look at the placement of highways. And once you start realizing that those were intentional, I mean, nothing, it's like a film set. Right. It's like if you saw something in there, there's a 99.99% chance that someone intentionally placed that.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with highways. You look at that in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Yep. Highway 235 was created for a reason. So, but even in that similarity, if you look at North Tulsa's people who live in Tulsa, especially North Tulsa, Black people, period, in Tulsa, are committed to rebuilding North Tulsa. And it's gone through different iterations over 100 plus years, 102 years now, since the race massacre. But when you look at Oklahoma City and Highway 235, Black people were settled in downtown. Black people lived in Deep Deuce, which was our Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
Highway 235, the same thing happened in Tulsa. So when you displace people, you lose their culture. So the Black identity in Oklahoma City has suffered because the identity has been whitewashed and eliminated, versus Tulsa, which they have something to attach themselves to. So then people ask, why are people not together? Well, that construction of that freeway, 235, started in 1914 in terms of the idea of removing folks. Because the East Side wasn't always Black. Yeah. The East Side was an immigrant place too. And where did they go? Sundown Town, Edmond. So, but when we don't talk about these things, which at the end of its culture, you lose the full context of stuff.
You know, and that recently, I don't remember where I saw it, maybe Non-Doc or something like along those lines. They were talking about the racist language inherent in deeds in Edmond. That, like, if you go back so far, I mean, it's like, oh, wow. You know,
I live in a neighborhood now.
Yeah.
Where the deed still says Negroes cannot own a home. So the pool house is not a pool house. That was a place that Negroes lived in Oklahoma. They couldn't occupy the main house. They had, and it's in the deed. And don't think I haven't had a conversation with the board, because I have, but there's always this reason why it can't change. Because there's a first generation homeowner in our neighborhood, a series of them that just don't want it to change. And here was the answer. Well, we don't operate that like that now. But I've only found 4 homes that are owned by Black people in our neighborhood. But they would then wonder why you don't see Black people. Because if you look back at the deed, and it clearly says you've created a cultural environment that is not receptive to Black people. And technically, we are not supposed to live in our neighborhood.
Wow. Well, that was heavy.
Yeah.
So let's lighten it up a bit. We talked about OKC. We've talked about Black. But we have not yet really talked about eats.
Food, man.
Exactly. So let's jump in here. One of the last times I saw you, in fact, the last time I saw you was at your Juneteenth dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks for the invitation. No problem, I had a little bit of a learning experience. I remember when they brought the prawn over, I was like, oh, help. How do you eat this? You know, I honestly, it's just not something that it's ever been in my wheelhouse before. So that, you know, I'd heard of oxtails, but I'd never actually had one. So I got that. All in all, I mean, it was a fantastic experience. And You know, I like where there was a lot of African spices and different, just different flavors that you haven't had elsewhere. So let's talk about these dinners you've done. You've done Dinner in Black twice now, three times.
Third one's coming up on Black Friday.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So let's talk about why you decided to do those, the evolution of them. And, you know, I know we're a few months out, but let's go ahead and talk about that.
You know what? I wanted to do Dinner in Black. One, I like to cook, so I'll post online and I'll get people saying like, you know, you should do a dinner party or invite me to your house. And like, first of all, we're not friends. We know each other through social media. You can't come to my house. I know sometimes people do it jokingly, but when I started to really think about a dining experience and what people were asking of me, I was like, you know, well, maybe we should do a concept that brings attention to Black chefs that are just around the city. And it started out, Dinner in Black started out as a way to showcase Black chefs that were outside of being in Black-owned restaurants, because I was finding a lot of Black chefs all over the city that were not getting attention, because the assumption is that Black chefs are only in Black-owned restaurants, which is not true. So the first time we did it was at Milo, benefiting the Regional Food Bank. That one was a 5-course with Chef Siku, amazing chef. So the idea is how do we take the influences of spices and flavors from Africa, and even where are there any cross-cultural connections between the spices? So if you're in North Africa along the Mediterranean Sea, yes, there's Mediterranean influence. So yes, Black people do cook Mediterranean food because North Africa is right along the Mediterranean Sea. And so the idea is when you look at your plate, you can say, well, we would explain the spices that you're tasting here are from East Africa. The spices you're tasting from here are from whether it's West Africa or Congo. But this option here, you're like, well, what does this have to do with Africa? Well, you know, this is a Mediterranean style dish because there's Mediterranean influence in the continent. And it's not done in a way where people feel bad about asking, but it also brings that awareness of, oh, I didn't realize. Because how often are you served something intentional that way? So the next one that we're doing is an Afro-Latina themed dish, and on Black Friday this year, which I'm really excited about because there's a lot of cross-cultural connections between foods and grains and spices. And that's really the emphasis, is getting people to look at great food and think about the influences of African-American cuisine and African cuisines across different regions and cultures right on your plate. Mm-hmm. And it starts a great conversation. So that's where Dinner in Black came from. And I'm excited about this one. This is going to be a stretch and ideas and creativity, but I'll see the final menu this upcoming week, and I'm excited to see what they got on the menu.
You know, and I'm finally kind of dipping my toes in the food world. That's one of those things where I've always gone and eaten, but it's never been something I've studied and what have you. So I love these cultural intersections, like you mentioned. Like, I didn't realize the kind of the crosshairs or intersection between Japanese culture and South America. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, after trying some of that, and now you mentioned these. And so, now that you mentioned this, I'm like, oh yeah, it's these crazy, I guess, for, you know, in cultural parlance, mashups. But these things have existed for centuries.
Absolutely.
And you had to bring them to the front. Do you have a venue picked out for this one yet?
Yeah, we'll be back at Milo.
Okay.
Back at Milo at the Ellison Hotel.
Great space.
Yeah, I love the space. I love working with them over there. But even when we start talking about curry flavor, when you think about curry, the first thing you think about is Middle Eastern cultures and communities. But I'm like, but there is an influence from, like, for example, with Kenyan. So there's a lot of curry flavors in Kenya. Well, there's a lot of cross-cultural connections, a lot of curry and Indian influence in Kenya. Why? It's the continents are right next door to it. Countries are right next door to each other. And that's just what makes the food experience for us. And we've been able to create a way to use food to have great conversation, to get people to think we actually have a lot more in common than we do different, but we're using food as our medium to do that.
Absolutely. Well, That's kind of the high end of it, I guess. On the more democratic or pedestrian sense, you got Foodie Fest coming up here in a couple months. What's the date of that?
That's October 7th. It's actually a big day for Oklahomans because it's the Red River rivalry with the University of Texas and University of Oklahoma, and even how that started. We picked a day. Meaning, like, everybody's going to Texas. Everybody's not going to Texas.
Right.
I've been to this Texas State Fair once, but that really came out of as well. I had a lot of friends in different spaces asking for us as a brand to support them, which I supported, but it was like, I can't really say OKC Black Eats host a Asian themed whatever. Like, to me, just brand wise, it didn't really work. I just didn't think I deserved to do that. Support and helping someone to do it, one. But Foodie Fest came because I wanted to have a place where there was like an international food festival. There are festivals around the city. Mm-hmm. There are events that happen all the time. But none of them are very outright and very forward with, this is for cultural cuisines representing women and minority-owned, Oklahoma-based business. Wasn't very forward with it. So the first year we had 54 vendors, mainly food, and it was an amazing experience. And so we'll be now at Bicentennial Park. Same thing. We have more food. We have some native-owned businesses, which I'm excited about. More vegan, vegetarian options, some Filipino food, some Puerto Rican food, of course, some Asian food, and so like a little bit of everything for Foodie Fest.
The last one was at Scissors Tail, and you're at Bicentennial, which, to give people a sense, because it's one of those things that you hear the name and you're like, where the hell was that? Basically, it's wedged between the Civic Center and what you would call municipal or City Hall, which is the municipal building. Mm-hmm. So why did you choose that from changing from Scissor Tail to that location?
Honestly, I really felt like it's better for the vendors. As much as Scissor Tail is a beautiful park, mm-hmm. it's a public park that's too expensive for our food trucks.
Fair.
This entire effort in the work that we do is to make it fair for those local businesses who typically don't have opportunities. So we don't see a lot of local businesses at our state fair or at some of the other big festivals because it's expensive for them. I wanted there to be not a barrier to showcase our amazing local talent. And so, one, Bicentennial Park is a beautiful place, beautiful location, beautiful park. The architecture around Bicentennial is beautiful. There's parking. So logistically it works better, but then also our food trucks won't have to worry about being taxed an unreasonable amount of money on the back end when they could put more money in their pocket. And that's what we definitely wanted to do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, for the setup of this, I'm just trying to figure out the logistics. Yeah. Are they going to, the trucks themselves, be in the park or ringing it?
Oh, no. They won't let you go on the grass.
I didn't think they would.
Yeah, so you can think about almost like a horseshoe. So like Walker, then up on Couch, and what's the other road I think of? But basically, it's going to be like a horseshoe.
Okay. So similar to what they do at the Museum of Art whenever they have street events?
Yeah. So all the food trucks will be like almost like a horseshoe shaped, kind of like a horseshoe barrier or U barrier, looking at the Civic Center. So we have a great backdrop, and then we have some food carts and non-food vendors like retail and novelty items and some nonprofits that'll be in the park on the sidewalks and on the green lawn area with some entertainment. So it'll be a lot of local vendors there having a great time. I'm excited about this one. I really am excited about this one.
Yeah, and what has changed philosophically, I guess? I mean, obviously with the first one, you're giving things a go and seeing how they work out logistically. What are some of the things that you had to change from the first one to this
Actually, nothing. I mean, everything, honestly, it's the same. I mean, the effort is the same. Well, I'll say this. What I did have to reconsider is the number of applicants that we got.
Yeah.
The first year was like 88. This year we had like 185.
Wow.
people. So it was tough to have to narrow it down from that many applicants with them amazing like vendors from all over the state who are interested. We have some folks from Dallas and Atlanta that applied as well. So trying to narrow it down, that was the toughest part. But other than that, it's the commitment to Foodie Fest becoming like the international food festival destination here in Oklahoma City, that we are unapologetic about supporting women and minority-owned businesses in Oklahoma, right here in Oklahoma City.
I love it. It's like you said, there are lots of cultural festivals.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you go, all over town, there's different places. You got Czech out west, up north coming up. You'll have the Greek festival. But this is nice because you have just a diverse.
Oh yeah, it's like a melting pot, and I like to do things that people don't suspect from Oklahoma.
Right.
Like and even from the feedback from like the food trucks, some of the vendors was they hadn't really been at an event where it was other similar like smaller operations or mom and pop type businesses that they didn't know anything about either. So to see them, hey, take a quick break from off the truck and go grab a bite from their neighbor or go to the food cart because they bought seasonings from one person and they use those seasonings to add a little flavor to somebody else's. So that like local support amongst that community was something that was unique, and to hear them say it and excited about it, man, that makes Foodie Fest like something that I see as being impactful in terms of the local support, but people feel like they actually had an opportunity.
Yeah.
And when a local business, when a small business, a 2-person operation says they made several $1,000s that made their month, man, that's all I need to hear.
Yeah. Gives you the reason for doing it and come back and doing it again next year.
So the philosophy of it is the same. As we continue to grow, this is going to be harder to figure out. How do we make room? Where do we need to be located? What space do we choose to be a part of to facilitate this effort for local business? I mean, no offense to corporations and big corporations, but this is about our local women and minority-owned businesses.
Speaking of all of those things, we now have our first James Beard winner.
I know, right? That's exciting.
And
that's
it happens
exciting.
to be
Chef Black.
Exactly.
Yeah, Chef Black.
So this all kind of came together. I'm like, man, what a banner year.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
And then that's where we were talking about earlier about this change in how we cover things. Here you have a Jamaican-born chef that is residing here in Oklahoma City that's traveled around and done some amazing things and got this phenomenal award. And even with Florence's winning and a James Beard Award as well, to me, it just begs the question, now that attention is brought to these two institutions, what about everybody else? Right? Let's not just cover people because we have two now. Well, there are so many other businesses that were not truly living up to our creed as Oklahoma supporting local. Are we truly living up to it? And I think in the media space, and even what I do is, it's just there's another opportunity to talk about some other local business. Yeah. Because not enough of our local businesses get the attention that they deserve.
Absolutely.
And we saw that during COVID, And sometimes it really did break my heart when I would hear my colleagues say like, man, we don't have someone that advocates for us like you do. I'm like, well, I don't have the bandwidth to do it. But why don't you go reach out to people that should, right? And force them. But you can't make somebody do something they're not passionate about. And I like the fact that we're a part of the conversations now of an organization that truly is committed to bringing attention to our Black-owned and minority-owned businesses. Because we go beyond food. We are advocating the Capitol for legislation. We do a bunch of different things because it truly is bigger than food.
And you're right. There's no one advocates for themselves even. Like I will, if I do get press releases, I mean, they're almost always from like chain restaurants, places where they can afford a large marketing firm, PR firm to kind of do their work for them. So I'm just going to say it right here and now, like editor at okgazette.com. If you have a restaurant, my pitch here is will write for food. Hit me up and say you want to have a conversation. You got some food that I need to try, and I'll come visit. Because you're right. Like that's one of the things, and the trouble with in a business model like we had that was all advertising supported. I had more stories than I had pages for, and so that's where the digital space will allow us moving forward to really do things, and not only that, the timeliness of it all. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to doing more is more food.
But what
coverage.
restaurants have to also do as well, sending a press release doesn't guarantee you anything.
Right.
It is merely just letting somebody know who and what you do. That doesn't mean you have a compelling story.
Right.
So even for me, I had to take it a step further. Like I had to get to know you. Like I had to reach out to the paper. I mean, y'all live a couple blocks away from me. So let's go knock on the door. Because when you get inundated with so much stuff, you're going to miss a lot of things. So I would encourage restaurant, small business, entrepreneur, can't just rely on sending an email or a press release to get someone's attention. You got to take it a step further and build a relationship. And I'm glad that, we built one to where if you can't cover something for me, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I know we have a relationship to where something will happen and we'll help each other out. And that's just the old part that does frustrate me in the restaurant world. It's the claim that you don't have time.
Yeah.
Dude, you got time. There aren't many restaurants open 6-7 days a week and more than 10 hours a day.
Right.
You got time. Many of them are closed on Mondays. Does it take you about an hour of time to go knock on someone's door and say, hey, this is who I am. I sent you a press release. How can we work together? That's a simple question.
It's so very simple. And this is how so many of my relationships have started.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes from, people irritated where they, come in with an attitude like, well, how do I do this or that? I'm like, dude, you just say something. I mean, that's how the Grand Gentleman cover story that we did a couple years ago came.
Yep.
Corey put on Twitter. He's like, how do I get on the cover of the Gazette? And Steven from the tower was like, I know someone. And sent the message across. I looked up Grand Gentleman and saw what they did. And I was like, dude,
it's a relationship.
Absolutely.
It's at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And that's one of the great things about living in Oklahoma. You're about one person away. Now, if you lived I lived in Houston, although I knew a lot of people, I was still having to compete for time. You're one person away from someone that actually can help you. So go knock on the door. Go let me go talk to you face to face. How can we help each other? Those are just easy questions to have. But also there's a generational gap too. Being a Gen Xer and having a lot of baby boomer influence in the old school kind of way. My sales background too. Like I want people to know me and my face so you know what I'm about and I can be of service to the other person as well.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just all about building relationships. Because especially when someone sends me some sort of testing message, I'm like, it sounds like you're complaining that we are not friends. Would you like to be my friend? Is that the question that you're asking?
If you want coverage, pay this invoice and I will gladly give you some coverage, right? Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about how this intersection of a lot of different things, like what you do. I mean, there's a media aspect to it, but as you said, pay this invoice. Whereas as news has always basically been, or at least attempted to be, even in this city, and this is what I said when I was covering cannabis, is like people were like, oh, so if we advertise, you can get a story. I was like, no, that's not how it works. But the thing is, the cannabis companies that have a budget to advertise are the ones doing big things that are worthy of a story and writing about. So these things, they seem like there's a lot more collusion than there actually is. So, and I'm like, in most cases, it's like, just what is your story? I mean, that's why we're here.
But at the same time, you have a business. So you have to do things to get it going. Just because you open something and you think I'm showing people up, oh, you come by and try our food and post it. Like, okay, just because your plate is $60, guess what? My time is worth more than $60.
You're right.
But do you have a compelling story that matches our brand message of why we should support? What's the story behind it? Because I've tasted a lot of food. And I don't want to drive 35 minutes to go taste your lobster tails.
Right.
That's not exciting for me because that's my time. Right. So I think that's where I think just in business, period, people have to look that no one's entitled to cover you on their platform. Can we build a relationship that we can help each other? That's at the end of the day. Because from what I do at the end of the day, it is I want to bring attention to things that are not getting the attention that they deserve. That's it. Yeah. If you want some attention, like you said, guess what? There's this thing called you can pay for services.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a relationship.
Right.
So just pay it. And even if we do have a relationship, because you value what I do, you should pay folks for their time, or at least find ways where you can truly help each other.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the Oklahoma way.
Okay. All right. Yeah. There's a lot of, kind of pivoting between what you're doing and what I'm doing. I know a lot of what we talk about are kind of tools of the trade and new stuff. Yeah. Again, you're started podcasting yourself. This is, who knows what order we'll end up releasing these in. But sequentially, this is the fourth one that we've done here. What are some of the tools that you found? I mean, obviously, AI has burst onto the scene recently. And I number one, it's amazing capabilities. The event space that they do here, we were looking at the posters last night. He threw in a prompt and you have all of this. And there's one part of me that's like, oh my God, that's amazing and simple and easy. Yeah. And then there's that part of me, I'm like, but the human element of the art has gone away. So
I struggled with that too in the beginning until I attended this AI marketing summit. And they did a great job of addressing that concern, but they also put it in context of use it as a tool to become more efficient with ideas. Because otherwise I'd have to hire a marketing person, pay them. It might take a week or two, but using technology to get my ideas flushed out faster has really been a huge advantage for me with AI. So even with the Bigger Than Food podcast, I don't have time to create clips, although I can do it. But the fact that I can use a tool that'll give me the top 10, a score, and a caption, I can use other type of like auto generation things to create scripts from my audio for books or whatnot. So the using of the tools has actually helped my business become a lot more proficient. And being able to get information back for partners or ideas out faster, which has been a huge advantage for me because time is important. Especially working for yourself, like time is really important in being able to get things out faster and being able to make some more money.
Absolutely. And I kind of wonder with the intersection of what I do, we always thought with what was called computer aided reporting back in the day, it'd be like, oh, we've got more time to do things, which means we can do better and more work. And I don't know, as we've seen the media landscape, that didn't necessarily turn out to be the case. So I'm one of these guys. I love, science fiction, and it took me a long time to realize that science fiction is not necessarily space operas and the like. I do not like that, but kind of these almost cautionary tales about the human experience and how it intersects with technology. So But
what's funny is that even when we think about growing up, you had to go to the library, you had to get your sources, and they can tell if you were copy and paste and it didn't sort appropriately, you got an F on your paper. So I looked at AI as the same tool. Versus, you have to use it responsibly, but being able to, how can I get through my activity or my idea faster? So if I need to create a workbook, I know I have a tool that I can use to create a workbook from my idea versus I would rather spend $100 a year for a service versus it's going to take me 3 months. And then this person costed me $3,000. So I'll spend $100 and get it done faster, and I'll save money to be able to make money. So those are the things in terms of in business that I've been able to incorporate. So we've gone from, our heavy concentration on Black-owned restaurants and small businesses, and now expanding the scope to include, when we say we are bigger than food, to other types of Black-owned businesses in different industries and support more types of minority-owned businesses that are not just Black-owned, to other projects to help those businesses learn how to make their first 6 figures. And this is the part that I'm really excited about now. What we're doing is our campaign that we've been working on for 2 years called Boss Up Oklahoma is focused on helping our small businesses reach their first 6 figures. In the 2010 census, the average African-American-owned firm in the Oklahoma City metro area didn't make more than $67,000 in annual sales.
Wow.
That's not too far. And today, it's not too far apart. Right. But when I look at the support offered, no one's telling me how to get to the bag. Tell me how to make money. I don't need you. I have an MBA degree. I don't need you to tell me how to get an LLC. I don't need you to tell me how to do a plan to go get bank financing. If I didn't have any money, can you show me how to make $500 today? You can show me that, I'm going to listen. If you can't show me how to make money because you work for a corporation and a salary, I don't want to talk to you. So that's been the focus of that, because I hear all this feedback from businesses. They're like, yeah, we're open, but the reason why I have to close because I don't have foot traffic, I don't have a marketing budget, people don't know who we are, but I need to find a way to increase foot traffic, let folks know who we are, because I got to make some more money, or I close a business and it affects my family.
Right.
You know, so that's where some of the pivots that we're going to. And so when people start seeing that, you know, when I say we are bigger than food, I'm making a very direct statement that we are bigger than food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, man.
I mean, I enjoyed this, man.
This has been great.
Yeah.
I know we usually have our sidebars.
We never have enough time when we sit down and talk, man.
Never at all. And we are well past overdue for one of our, now it's become a routine trip to Elmer's.
Hey, this is a beautiful space. Hopefully I can come back and host a couple events with some of our industry partners in the whiskey space and have things here. This is awesome. This is awesome. I love this space. It's a beautiful space.
How this came together, you know, I've known Clark for actually 20 years. Yeah. And then this place has been around for 17 years. So my thought when I was kind of pivoting with this brand and doing different things is like, how can I, again, like bring communities together, and why don't my friends down the street who own businesses know my other friends down the street who
So it took you 18 years to support Clark like this?
Yeah, oh, yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's just been dangling in the wind without me in the meantime.
No, this is awesome. And congratulations to, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to take the pivot with the Gazette that y'all have done. I think it's the right move. I'm excited for you. I'm pretty sure it is a scary thing. Anything that I can do to support you, man, you know, I'm just a phone call away. I'm a block and a half away as well.
Yes, sir.
I'm definitely here to support you guys on your journey too.
Oh, I appreciate it. And as you know, if I have a question about something, I'm not shy.
I know.
All right, let's go get a drink.
All right, cool. Thanks, man.